Have you ever sat in silence replaying a conversation, wishing you had answered differently? The insult still echoes in your mind, sharp as glass, while you sit there asking yourself why you allowed their words to cut so deep. Some people don't speak to connect, they speak to wound. Their tone isn't conversation, it's a weapon. They interrupt to assert power. They mock to place you beneath them. And if you're not careful, you carry their poison long after they've forgotten the exchange. But the Stoics saw this game centuries ago. They understood that real strength is not found in shouting louder or striking back harder. It lives in the space between stimulus and response, in the ability to answer with clarity rather than ego. A single line, calmly spoken, can unravel arrogance more effectively than an outburst ever could. Words, when chosen with precision, can be sharper than any blade. So ask yourself, what would it mean to never be shaken by disrespect again? To respond not with anger, but with composure so steady it unsettles the very person who tried to rattle you. In the next few minutes, we'll uncover 3 Stoic comebacks that do exactly that. Simple phrases that disarm conflict, restore your dignity, and remind others that your peace is not theirs to disturb. Stay with me. What you're about to hear might just change the way you carry yourself in every conversation from this day forward. As we step into the first chapter, picture yourself in a room where every word you've prepared is waiting to take shape, only to be cut down by a single smirk. The jab isn't about truth, it's about power. Someone interrupts, their voice sharp, dripping with sarcasm, while everyone else watches to see how you'll respond. Have you felt that sting when silence no longer feels like patience but betrayal of yourself? I know it too well. I once played the role of the peacekeeper, biting my tongue, laughing off insults, nodding through the shade. I told myself I was keeping harmony, but over time that silence rotted me from within. Marcus Aurelius warned, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Yet I was handing that power away every time I let someone's arrogance go unchallenged. It wasn't strength, it was surrender. I still remember the day it broke. A man I worked with, always loud, always late, cut into my presentation with a smirk. "Do you even understand what you're saying? Sounds like fluff to me." My chest burned. My instinct was to shrink again, but then calmness settled over me. I looked at him and said, "I'm not the one. Try someone who tolerates nonsense." The room stilled. His smirk vanished. No one laughed because they all knew the truth had landed. That was the turning point. I realized that most rude people aren't powerful, they're simply unchallenged, and silence is their fuel. So here is the reminder: you don't need to raise your voice to protect your dignity. One steady sentence can reclaim your ground. Try someone else. I'm not the one. Because the day you stop tolerating disrespect is the day you begin to walk in your own strength. Moving into the second chapter, imagine standing in the glow of something you've poured yourself into, a creation, a risk, a piece of your soul made visible. You share it with the world, not because it's perfect, but because it's yours. And then, with the flick of a careless tongue, someone reduces it to nothing more than a punchline. Their words slice quickly, wrapped in false concern, laced with envy, cloaked as humor. This feels kind of cringe. Are you sure this is the vibe you want to go for? On the surface, it sounds like advice, but you feel the sting. Because you know it was never meant to build you, it was meant to make you question yourself. Have you noticed how easy it is for people to appoint themselves judges of your life? They sit on invisible thrones, casting verdicts with casual phrases, as if your choices are open court for their approval. But here's the truth. Not every opinion deserves to land inside your mind. Not every comment has earned the right to shape who you are. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations, "The opinion of 10,000 men is of no value if none of them knows anything about the subject." How many times do we forget that? How often do we take the stray arrows of strangers and plant them in our own chest as if they were facts instead of noise? I remember this well. There was a man, Derek, let's call him, who carried a talent for subtle poison, never outright cruel, never openly hostile. His weapon was the backhanded compliment, the smile that dripped with quiet contempt. When I shared a project I had labored over, refining it for months, Derek's response was quick. "Interesting. Better than I expected from you." The younger version of me would have explained. I would have defended every decision, laid out every reason, hoping to prove the worth of my work in his eyes. That was the trap. The more I explained, the more I handed him the script of my insecurities. But something in me had shifted. I saw his words for what they were, not a reflection of truth, but a mirror of his own insecurity. So I met him with calm. "I'm not offended. I just don't value your opinion enough." The silence that followed was heavier than any argument. He blinked, expecting resistance. He got stillness. And in that stillness, the power returned where it belonged. Here's what people don't tell you. Most criticism isn't about you. It's about them. People project their fears, their envy, their regrets. They toss those shadows onto you, hoping you'll carry them so they don't have to. And if you catch every shadow, you'll live under a sky that isn't even yours. Seneca said, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." The imagination of others, when you let it sink into you, becomes a prison. They picture you as less. They dismiss your work. They want your choices bent to their comfort. And when you live by their imagination, you abandon your reality. But here is the Stoic shift. You choose which voices enter your mind. You are the gatekeeper. You cannot stop people from speaking, but you can decide the weight of their words. And most words, when measured carefully, are feathers pretending to be stones. Ask yourself, how many critics in your life have never built anything of their own? How many loud opinions come from the sidelines, from those too afraid to step into the arena? Their judgment is cheap because they risk nothing, and yet we hand them everything: our peace, our energy, our self-belief. The comeback, "I'm not offended, I just don't value your opinion enough," is not arrogance. It is clarity. It is the refusal to pay rent to voices that have no home in your vision. It is the discipline of preserving your inner fortress from those who do not deserve entry. I've seen this transformation in others too. A friend once confessed that he spent years chasing approval online, molding his work to every comment. He told me he realized he was no longer creating from his soul. He was creating from the expectations of strangers. It nearly broke him. The day he stopped valuing empty opinions was the day he started living in truth again. You don't need to argue. You don't need to justify. And you certainly don't need to bleed every time someone throws a casual insult disguised as feedback. Sometimes the most powerful answer is indifference, spoken with grace. So the next time someone drapes their jealousy in a joke or delivers their insecurity as if it were wisdom, remember this: you are not required to take ownership of their projection. You can let it fall. You can look them in the eye, steady as stone, and say, "I'm not offended. I just don't value your opinion enough." Because nothing rattles the insecure more than realizing they no longer have permission to shape your story. And from this point, the journey deepens, because when you stop needing approval, you unlock a freedom far greater than anyone's praise. Advancing to the third chapter, picture a crowded room, alive with chatter, laughter, and the easy rhythm of human connection. In the middle of it, someone breaks the flow, not with wisdom, not with warmth, but with a sharp jab disguised as humor. The laughter turns uneasy. You feel the sting land on you, but beneath it, something else is obvious. This wasn't about truth. It was about hunger. Have you noticed this? Some people don't speak to connect. They speak to be noticed. They cloak their insecurity in sarcasm, hoping cruelty will be mistaken for cleverness. They feed on reactions the way a starving man reaches for bread, and if you're not careful, you become their meal. This is where Stoicism shines its light. Marcus Aurelius once reminded himself, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." And what is the enemy here? It is not the insult itself, but the performance behind it, the desperate plea for relevance. When you understand that, the insult loses its teeth. You see not an attack, but a cry. I've seen this play out many times. At a gathering not long ago, the air was relaxed, friends catching up, stories unfolding, until Ethan, the man who always had to be the center, began his usual performance. He took aim at me, smirking, as he said, "Still working on that little project of yours. Must be nice to have so much free time," the old version of me would have explained, or laughed along to smooth the edges, but not that day. That day, I chose a different path. I looked at him, steady and calm, and replied, "That's a strange way to beg for attention. Do you need a hug?" The room shifted, not in awkwardness, but in clarity. The performance was exposed, because here's the hidden truth. Attention-seeking behavior thrives in the shadows of unspoken tension. Once you shine light on it, the show ends. Seneca warned, "What need is there to weep over parts of life? The whole of it calls for tears." And in that moment I understood him more deeply. People who cut others down are often drowning in themselves. Their cruelty is not courage, it's a distraction from their own despair. When you reveal that truth gently, you don't just defend yourself, you offer them a mirror. Think about it. The loudest critics, the most reckless voices, are often the most hollow inside. They mistake provocation for strength. They throw barbs because silence terrifies them. Silence forces them to face what they've been avoiding. So they create noise, hoping to drown out the emptiness. But you do not have to join their chaos. The Stoic path is different. You respond with composure. You turn their performance back on itself. And in doing so, you reveal the hunger they were trying so hard to hide. I've had people ask, but won't calling it out make things worse? My answer is simple. Worse for who? For them, yes, because they lose the power they thought they had. For you, no, because you regain control of the moment. And for everyone else watching, it becomes a lesson, a reminder that disrespect disguised as humor is nothing more than insecurity in costume. Epictetus taught, "It is not he who reviles you or strikes you who insults you, but your opinion that these things are insulting." See the wisdom there. If you believe the jab is truth, it will cut deep. But if you see it as a plea for attention, it passes through you. Your calm turns the insult into a confession. So here is the principle. Don't fight fire with fire. Let your calmness be the water. Don't match sarcasm with louder sarcasm. Reveal the hunger behind it, and it collapses under its own weight. And when you say, "That's a strange way to beg for attention," you're not mocking. You're observing. You're holding up the mirror no one else dares to hold. That's why it cuts deeper than any insult. It shows them, and everyone else, what's really happening. The insecure don't fear your anger. They fear exposure. So the next time someone throws a cheap jab in your direction, remember this: you're not in their play. You don't need to be their stage. You can end the performance with a single calm line. Look at them, breathe, speak with steadiness. That's a strange way to beg for attention. Because once you reveal the performance, the show is over, and the room, once again, belongs to peace. Here's where the fourth chapter unfolds, in the presence of voices that never rest. The kind of people who fill every space with noise, as if silence were their enemy. You've met them, the ones who dominate conversations, not with insight, but with sheer volume, mistaking confidence for substance. And in their endless stream of words, something becomes clear. Silence has never looked so noble. Now imagine being trapped in a discussion where one voice refuses to let others breathe. They jump in first. They linger last. Their commentary, a river with no end. At first, you listen politely. Then, you notice the hollowness behind their certainty. They quote half-truths, argue with shadows, and cling to borrowed wisdom. And the more they speak, the more you realize what they reveal is not strength, but emptiness. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The more we value things outside our control, the less control we have." Those who fear silence cling to words because silence forces them inward. Silence is a mirror. It reflects the truth they'd rather avoid, so they keep talking, louder and longer, hoping no one notices that their certainty is built on sand. I remember sitting in a group chat where this dynamic came alive. One man, let's call him Jordan, always had something to say. Whether the topic was relationships, politics, books, or money, Jordan was the first to weigh in. But his words carried no weight. They were echoes, borrowed opinions presented as wisdom. The group grew quieter as he grew louder, until one day, in the middle of his monologue, I leaned forward and said, "Every time you speak, it's a reminder to value silence." The air shifted. The conversation paused, because truth doesn't need to shout. It arrives once, sharp and undeniable. And in that moment, everyone could feel it. Silence had just reclaimed its dignity. Seneca said, "It is better to be silent and be thought a fool than to open one's mouth and remove all doubt." The danger of endless noise is not that others hear it, it's that it exposes the speaker. People think they're proving strength when they dominate, but what they prove is fear. The fear of being unseen, the fear of facing themselves without an audience. This is where the Stoic discipline becomes essential. Stoicism is not about suppressing words, it is about making words count. The Stoics trained themselves to speak less, but mean more. They knew that brevity carries power, because silence gives words their weight. Without silence, words are just clutter. Ask yourself, when was the last time someone's silence taught you more than another's speech? Perhaps it was in a heated argument, when one person stayed calm, and their restraint said more than 1,000 rebuttals. Or in a meeting, when the one who rarely speaks finally does, and the room falls still because their words arrive with the authority of patience. The opposite is true as well. The more someone talks, the less their voice carries. Noise dilutes itself. The louder they speak, the more invisible their meaning becomes. And that's why this comeback cuts so sharply. Every time you speak, it's a reminder to value silence. It unmasks the truth everyone has felt, but no one has said. That some words diminish the very respect they seek. But here's the deeper message. This is not just about silencing others. It's about teaching ourselves to honor quiet, to choose carefully when to break it, to see silence not as emptiness, but as space where clarity grows. Epictetus urged, "First learn the meaning of what you say, and then speak." Imagine if we carried that discipline today, how different our conversations would be. The power is not in constant talking. The power is in timing. And when you understand that, you no longer envy the loud. You begin to admire the still. So the next time you find yourself surrounded by noise, at work, at gatherings, even in your own home, remember this: silence is not weakness. Silence is a force. You do not need to match the noise with more noise. You can let stillness be your presence, and when the moment calls for it, one calm sentence can return balance to the room. Every time you speak, it's a reminder to value silence. Because in a world terrified of quiet, the one who embraces it holds the deepest strength. At this stage of our journey, picture the sting of a careless comment, one that cuts not because it is true, but because it finds a tender place in you. The words echo long after they were spoken. They follow you home, into the quiet, where you stare at the ceiling wondering if maybe, just maybe, they were right. That is how insults work. Not through strength, but through the cracks in our own belief. Now imagine this. A friend laughs at your clothes. You actually think that looks good. The room chuckles, and you laugh along, pretending it doesn't hurt. Or someone scoffs at your dream. That's adorable. You think you'll actually make it. Outwardly you smile, but inside you crumble, and for weeks you carry their words as if they were carved into stone. This is the trap of youth, of inexperience, of letting others define us. I know it well. I used to bend beneath every careless remark, shrinking myself in the shadow of someone else's opinion. I thought their words were mirrors, showing me who I really was. But they weren't mirrors, they were daggers, and I was the one holding the blade against my own chest. The Stoics saw this danger clearly. Epictetus warned, if someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit in the provocation. The insult itself is powerless until we hand it power. The real wound is not in the words, but in our willingness to believe them. Life, of course, does not stay gentle. Over time, it bruises you in ways far sharper than insults. You lose what you thought was permanent. You watch friends betray you. You stand alone when you thought you were surrounded. And it is in those crucibles that something changes. The words of others no longer cut the way they once did. Because once you have survived storms, a stray breeze cannot shake you. I remember a turning point. Someone tried to diminish my work with a smirk. It's easy for you. You don't really take things seriously anyway. A younger me would have argued, listed my sacrifices, tried to prove my worth. But not that day. That day I smiled and said calmly, if you're trying to hurt my feelings, you'll have to try harder. Silence. A silence deeper than any insult, because in that moment the power shifted. They wanted me rattled, but I was steady. They wanted a reaction, but I gave them composure, and the look on their face told the story. They realized they no longer had the access they once enjoyed. Here's the truth, people only control you to the extent you let them touch your emotions. Some people thrive on seeing you flinch. They feel taller when you shrink. They feel strong when you crumble. But when you meet their jab with clarity, when you remind them that your spirit is no longer so easily pierced, they lose the very control they crave. Seneca once said, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. To master your reaction is to master yourself. To no longer hand your emotions to anyone who happens to throw words in your direction. That is sovereignty. Think about it. Every insult is a test. Do you believe their version of you, or do you hold steady in your own? And each time you choose steadiness, you grow stronger. Each time you refuse to flinch, you reclaim another piece of yourself. The comeback, you'll have to try harder, is not arrogance. It is defiance of control. It is a quiet declaration that you have faced worse, endured more, and risen stronger than any shallow remark could ever reach. It says, "I know who I am, and you cannot take that from me with a smirk." So the next time someone tosses a cheap shot your way, don't argue, don't shrink, don't explain. Meet their eyes, steady as stone, and say, "If you're trying to hurt my feelings, you'll have to try harder." Because when insults no longer touch you, you become untouchable. And that kind of resilience, the resilience forged in fire, is the strength that carries you far beyond the noise. Entering the 6th chapter, think of the moments when someone tries to drag you into a circus you never bought tickets for. They prod, they smirk, they bait you with words designed not to find truth, but to steal your calm. And in that instant, you know you could answer fire with fire. But why give them the honor of your energy? Now imagine this. You're in a meeting, presenting carefully thought-out work, when a colleague interrupts with a jab that has nothing to do with the task at hand. Not bad for someone who's usually late. The room chuckles lightly, not because it was funny, but because people laugh when they're unsure what else to do. All eyes turn to you, and your pulse quickens. The trap is set. In the past, I might have taken the bait, thrown a sharper jab back, explained myself, tried to prove I wasn't what he implied. But that only feeds the game. It only confirms that his words reached me. And the moment you react on someone else's terms, you surrender your ground. So instead, I looked at him, steady and calm, and said, "You're not on the level to get a reaction from me." Then I turned back to my work, as though nothing had happened. The silence that followed was thick, not because I raised my voice, but because I refused to. Not because I won an argument, but because I stepped out of the arena altogether. That's the deeper power of this line. It removes the stage beneath them. It makes their performance irrelevant. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Those words echo in moments like this, because what someone says about you is outside your control. But whether or not you hand them your reaction, that is always yours. Here's the hidden truth. Some people don't want dialogue. They want disruption. They don't want conversation. They want chaos. They poke and prod, not to solve, but to entertain themselves at your expense. And the only way they win is if you step into their ring. The greatest refusal is indifference. I learned this lesson the hard way. Years ago, I found myself in conflict with someone who thrived on passive-aggressive remarks. No matter what I did, he twisted it into a dig. One day, after yet another jab, I finally realized this isn't a debate, it's a trap. The more I defended myself, the more fuel I gave him. And when I stopped reacting, when I showed him he wasn't on the level to move me, his power dissolved. He never tried again. That's the essence of Stoic strength. You don't need to silence others with anger. You silence them by not handing them your dignity. You teach them that your peace is not negotiable. And once you set that standard, the people who thrive on disrespect simply fade. Epictetus said, If someone speaks badly of you, do not defend yourself against his opinions. Simply live so that no one will believe him. There is no greater answer than proof in how you carry yourself. The one who tries to provoke you reveals their smallness. The one who refuses to be provoked reveals their strength. So here is the lesson. Not every voice deserves your reply. Not every attack requires your defense. To respond to every provocation is to live as a puppet. But to choose your silence wisely, that is mastery. The next time someone comes at you with cheap sarcasm or veiled disrespect, pause, breathe, and remind yourself this is not my arena. I don't owe them my reaction. Look them in the eye. Let the words fall calm and clear. You're not on the level to get a reaction from me, because in that moment, you reclaim the stage. You remind them and yourself that your energy belongs to you. And nothing unsettles a provocateur more than the realization that their chaos cannot touch your center. If these words resonate with you, leave a simple untouchable in the comments. And if you want to keep sharpening this calm edge, subscribe quietly now, because this is the kind of strength worth carrying with you. Because in a noisy world, indifference to provocation is the ultimate power. At this stage of the journey, imagine someone leaning back with that smug half-smile, ready to throw a jab masked as humor. The words aren't designed to start dialogue, they're designed to cut you down while they stand taller on the scraps of your dignity. The room chuckles politely. But beneath the surface, everyone feels it. This wasn't wit. It was insecurity in costume. Now picture yourself in that very moment. Do you laugh it off, pretending you're unfazed, even as the remark lingers in your chest? Do you argue, throwing words like stones, trying to reclaim the ground they just stole? Or do you pause, breathe, and let one calm sentence carry the truth? That was a lot of effort just to sound insecure. I remember a meeting years ago where this exact scene played out. I had poured weeks into a project, polished every detail, and was finally presenting it to the team. Just as silence settled and attention focused, one colleague, let's call him Darren, leaned back and smirked. Well, I guess confidence really can make anything sound smart. The old me would have defended every angle, explained myself, tried to win approval from someone who had no real stake in my growth. But that day, I didn't. I smiled gently and said, "That was a lot of effort just to sound insecure." The room froze, not because my words were loud, but because they were clear. In an instant, the stage Darren had built for himself collapsed. He wasn't clever, he was exposed. And that's the point. Most insults aren't really about you. They are about the person throwing them. They are about fear, doubt, and the desperate attempt to control a space they feel slipping away. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The opinion of 10,000 men is of no value if none of them knows anything about the subject." And when someone mocks your effort without ever having built anything of their own, why should their voice carry weight? Their words don't measure you, they measure themselves. Seneca warned, "Most men quarrel with circumstances as if they were responsible for the evils that befall them. Those who lash out often reveal more about their own struggle than about you. Their sharpness is not strength, it is camouflage. Their jab is not a mirror, it is a mask." Here's the deeper truth. Insults are heavy for those who carry them inward. But the moment you see through them, the burden disappears. That's why this line is so powerful. It doesn't fight back, it reveals. It shifts the weight back where it belongs, onto the shoulders of the one who tried to disguise insecurity as strength. Think about it. When someone insults you, what do they actually want? They want your reaction. They want to feel the sting land. They want to see you bend. But when you meet their jab with calm observation, when you say, "That was a lot of effort just to sound insecure," you don't give them reaction, you give them a mirror. And few things are more devastating than being seen for what you truly are when you've tried so hard to hide it. I've watched this unfold countless times. The loudest voices in the room, once exposed, shrink into silence. Because the truth is undeniable, no mask survives a steady gaze. Epictetus taught, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. By choosing clarity over chaos, you rob others of the control they seek. You stop being their stage. You stop being their target. You become untouchable. So the next time someone wraps cruelty in humor, disguises envy as advice, or throws shade just to shine brighter themselves, don't carry their words. Expose them for what they are, calmly, steadily, without venom. Look at them. Let the silence stretch and say, "That was a lot of effort just to sound insecure." Because at the end of the day, insults are not about you. They are confessions dressed in sarcasm. And once you see them that way, they lose their sting forever. We've walked through the raw edge of the moment, the jab, the silence, the fire that rises in your chest when someone tests your dignity. That was part A, the symptom, the wound, the raw reality of being cut down. But now comes the turning point. Because Stoicism was never about staying in the wound, it was about transforming it. So as we move into part B, let's step beyond the sting and into the strength. This is where pain becomes the teacher, where every insult becomes a doorway to wisdom, and where steady clarity replaces chaos. From here, let's move deeper into the lesson that hides beneath the sting of disrespect. Because what matters is never just the moment someone tries to cut you down, it is what you choose to do with it. Every jab, every interruption, every smirk that carries contempt, they're all invitations. Invitations to either lose yourself in their chaos or to rise with steady resolve. Now imagine this. Someone mocks you in public, expecting you to flinch. The air thickens. Their eyes gleam, waiting for your reaction. That's the trap. But here's where Stoicism whispers, not every fight deserves your fists. Not every word deserves your reply. The real battlefield isn't out there, it's inside you. Marcus Aurelius once reminded himself, "You always own the option of having no opinion. There is never any need to get worked up or to trouble your soul about things you can't control." That truth is liberating, because when someone disrespects you, you cannot control their mouth, but you can control whether you hand them your peace. This is the heart of the comeback. I'm not the one. Try someone who tolerates nonsense. It isn't a shout. It isn't rage. It is clarity. It's a declaration that says, my time, my dignity, my energy, they are not free for you to trample. And once you draw that line, everything changes. I learned this the hard way. Years ago, I let silence rot my confidence. I swallowed comments that burned me alive inside, thinking I was choosing wisdom. But wisdom without boundaries becomes self-betrayal. Until one day, I finally saw the truth. When you allow disrespect, you teach others how to treat you. Every time you stay quiet in the face of contempt, you don't just lose the moment, you lose a piece of yourself. Seneca warned us, "He who does not prevent a crime when he can, encourages it." The same holds for disrespect. Allow it once, and you write permission for it to return again. But stand tall, calmly, and you strip it of its power. Picture a tree in a storm. The wind rages, branches whip, yet the trunk stands unmoved. That is the spirit you must cultivate. Not brittle, snapping at every gust, but grounded, firm, unwilling to bend for nonsense. When you calmly tell someone you will not play their game, you are not being cruel, you are being strong. I recall a colleague who built his identity on sarcasm. He thrived on belittling others, using laughter as a weapon. For months, I let it slide. Until one day, I looked him in the eye and said, "I'm not the one." The room shifted. People who had once joined in his laughter fell silent. And from that day forward, he never tried it again, because the truth is, most bullies survive on silence. Take that silence away, and they have nothing left. Epictetus taught, "No man is free who is not master of himself." Freedom is not proving yourself in every argument. Freedom is knowing you do not need to. By standing calmly, by refusing to tolerate nonsense, you reveal a higher order of strength. A strength that doesn't shout. A strength that simply is. So here is the strategy. When confronted with disrespect, pause. Breathe. Remember that their words reveal them, not you. And if a line must be drawn, draw it with precision. No theatrics, no rage, just steady clarity. I'm not the one. The ripple effect is profound. You protect your dignity. You earn respect without demanding it. And most importantly, you begin to see yourself differently. Not as someone at the mercy of others' noise, but as someone who carries peace like armor. And yes, people will say, "You've changed." They'll whisper that you're more difficult, less agreeable. Let them, because in truth, you haven't grown harsh. You've grown whole. You no longer tolerate what poisons your soul. So the next time disrespect finds you, don't shrink. Don't play small. Don't hand away your center for the sake of harmony. Look them in the eye, calm as stone, and let the truth stand. Try someone else. I'm not the one. Because the day you stop tolerating nonsense is the day you begin to live in full alignment with your own strength. Advancing into the second part of this journey, imagine walking through a marketplace of voices, stalls crowded with opinions, each one shouting louder than the next, each insisting their judgment matters more than your own. You move through the noise, carrying something fragile and precious, your work, your vision, your truth. And every few steps, someone throws their verdict across your path, hoping you'll pick it up and carry it as your own. Here's the danger. If you gather every voice, your arms are too full to hold what is truly yours. And before long, you're weighed down by judgments that never belong to you. This is why the Stoics insisted on clarity of mind. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The opinion of others should not disturb your peace, for their opinions are theirs, not yours." When someone mocks your dream, questions your choices, or sneers at your effort, they are not writing truth on your skin. They are simply revealing their own reflection. The line, "I'm not offended, I just don't value your opinion enough," isn't an insult. It's a shield. It tells the world, your words can exist, but they will not penetrate. It reminds you that not every voice has earned the right to echo inside your soul. I remember watching a friend wrestle with this exact burden. She was building a business from nothing, pouring herself into long nights and quiet mornings. Yet every time she shared her progress, some distant acquaintance felt compelled to speak. "Are you sure this will work? Isn't it risky? Doesn't this seem beneath you?" She carried their doubts as if they were debts. They drained her spirit more than the work itself. Until one day, she realized the truth. None of those voices had built anything themselves. None had walked the path she was walking. Why then should their doubts weigh more than her discipline? From that day forward, she stopped explaining. She stopped apologizing. And her response, calm and steady, became simple. "I hear you, but your opinion doesn't matter here. Her business grew, her peace returned, and the very voices that once mocked her now call her success lucky. Seneca reminded us, we are more often frightened than hurt, and we suffer more from imagination than from reality. Most of the suffering caused by other people's opinions happens in our imagination. We replay their words, we twist them into truths, but reality is simpler. Their judgments are shadows. They cannot shape you unless you invite them in. The discipline is in learning to close the gate, to choose whose voices you allow inside. Because if everyone's criticism is welcome, your mind becomes a public forum. And nothing pure can grow in a space that crowded. Think of it like tending a fire. Your vision, your work, your growth, it's the flame. Some people bring wood to help it burn brighter. Others bring water, pouring doubt and cynicism until the flame weakens. The Stoic path is knowing the difference, to thank those who add fuel and to calmly dismiss those who only bring water. So when you say, I'm not offended, I just don't value your opinion enough, you're not being cruel, you're being precise. You're declaring that not every passerby gets to hold the steering wheel of your life, and in that moment, you reclaim your direction. Here's the paradox. People often think dismissing an opinion is arrogance, but the opposite is true. Arrogance is letting everyone's voice matter equally, as if their judgments weigh the same as your lived experience. Wisdom is discernment, knowing what to carry, knowing what to leave. And here's where the power lies. When you stop needing everyone's approval, you begin to breathe differently. The noise quiets, the marketplace clears. You walk lighter, freer, grounded in your own clarity. So the next time someone throws shade at your work, your dream, or your presence, pause. Smile if you must. But don't let their insecurity rent space in your mind. Look at them, calm and steady, and remind yourself, their words are not my compass. Because the truth is simple, not every opinion deserves a seat at your table, and the sooner you learn that, the sooner you begin to live on your own terms. Here's where the third lesson emerges, not from the words that sting, but from the silence that follows after you reveal the truth. Because what looks like cruelty is often nothing more than hunger. Hunger for attention, hunger for validation, hunger for relevance. Once you see this, the game changes. Now imagine being in a room where someone throws jabs at everyone, pretending it's all in good fun. Their sarcasm drips like wine spilled on the floor, loud, messy, staining everything it touches. At first people laugh politely, but deep down they know what's happening. It isn't wit, it's desperation. And desperation, once exposed, is hard to unsee. This is why the comeback, that's a strange way to beg for attention, is so powerful. It doesn't insult, it unmasks. It shifts the spotlight from you back onto them, forcing them to reckon with the truth they've tried so hard to hide. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." When someone tries to diminish you for laughs, the Stoic response is not to fire back louder, but to rise above with calm precision. You don't mirror their behavior, you reveal it. You remind everyone watching that cruelty is never cleverness, and sarcasm at another's expense is a confession of emptiness. I once attended a gathering where a man, let's call him Ethan, always had to be the center of attention. Every story circled back to him, every joke was aimed at someone else. And soon enough, he turned to me. "Still working on that little project of yours? Must be nice to have so much free time." The old me would have defended myself. The old me would have explained the value of what I was building, desperate to prove it mattered. But not that night. Instead, I smiled and replied, "That's a strange way to beg for attention." The room went quiet. And in that silence, everyone understood. He wasn't witty, he was needy. He wasn't strong, he was starving. Seneca said, "It is the power of the mind to be unconquerable, and nothing demonstrates that power more than refusing to be dragged into someone else's performance. Because attention seekers thrive on reaction. Take away the reaction, and you take away their stage." Think about it. When someone mocks you, what do they really want? It's not truth. It's not growth. It's energy. They want to see your composure crack. They want to feel tall because you stumbled. But when you calmly expose the act for what it is, you leave them with nothing but their own reflection. And that reflection is often unbearable. Epictetus warned us, when someone provokes you, remember, it is your opinion of the incident that upsets you. If you see their jab as truth, it wounds you. If you see it as performance, it passes through you. That is the shift. Insults are not daggers unless you make them so. They are theater, and you choose whether to buy the ticket. I've watched leaders practice this discipline with extraordinary impact. In tense meetings, when a rival tries to belittle them, they don't rise in anger. They don't rush to defend themselves. They wait, calm and steady, and then quietly expose the insecurity hidden beneath the attack. And every time, the room shifts. Respect gravitates toward the one who stayed composed. Contempt clings to the one who needed to tear others down. That is why this line carries so much weight. It's not a weapon, it's a mirror. It holds up the truth. You are not hurting me. You are revealing yourself. And here's the deeper beauty of Stoicism. When you see insults as confessions, they lose their sting forever. The sarcasm that once cut you now feels like a diary entry written aloud. You can almost smile at it because it has nothing to do with you. So the next time someone wraps cruelty in humor, don't argue, don't flinch, don't carry their emptiness as your burden. Look at them, steady as stone, and let the truth land softly. That's a strange way to beg for attention, because at the end of the day, insults are not about you. They are echoes of someone else's hunger. And once you see them that way, they no longer touch your peace. Moving into the fourth lesson, think about the weight of words that never stop falling, a constant drizzle that soaks through everything, not because it carries truth, but because it never ends. We all know the type, the voice that fills every gap, every pause, every silence. At first, it seems like confidence, but soon it feels like suffocation. Now picture yourself in that room. One voice dominates, the rhythm of the conversation broken. They speak not to connect, but to control. They fear silence the way some fear the dark, because silence forces them to meet themselves, and many people are terrified of that encounter. The Stoics understood this fear. Marcus Aurelius confessed to himself, "The nearer a man comes to a calm mind, the closer he is to strength." Yet how many people confuse noise with strength? They think that if they never stop talking, they'll never be questioned. But the opposite is true. The more they speak without meaning, the more their emptiness shows. This is why the line, "Every time you speak, it's a reminder to value silence," lands with such weight. It isn't cruelty, it's clarity. It breaks the illusion that endless words equal wisdom. It reminds everyone watching that silence can be a teacher too. I remember being in a discussion group years ago. One man, let's call him Jordan, always had something to say. Every subject he was the first to answer, the last to stop. His tone was bold, but his knowledge was shallow. He quoted authors he hadn't read, argued points he didn't understand, and the more he talked, the less respect he earned. Until one day, after another long-winded monologue, someone finally said it. Every time you speak, it's a reminder to value silence. The effect was immediate. The room stilled. Jordan's performance collapsed. Because it was no longer about the noise he made, it was about the hollowness it revealed. Seneca warned, "It is better to be silent and be thought a fool than to speak and remove all doubt." The Stoic lesson here is not to fear speech, but to honor silence, to see silence not as emptiness, but as fertile ground. Every word should be a seed, and seeds can only grow when planted with intention. So how do we practice this? By resisting the urge to fill every gap. By remembering that pauses are not weaknesses, but power. The greatest leaders I've known speak less, but mean more. They pause, they measure, and when their words arrive, they land with force, because silence gave them weight. Contrast that with the constant talker. Their words spill without pause, and soon no one remembers what was said. Noise drowns itself. Silence makes words echo forever. Epictetus urged his students, "First, learn the meaning of what you say, and then speak." Imagine if we all lived by that. Conversations would be slower, calmer, but infinitely more powerful, because every word would carry the gravity of thought. So the next time you face someone who cannot stop filling the air, don't raise your voice to compete. Don't match their noise with your own. Stand steady, let the silence breathe, and if the moment calls for it, let the truth drop gently. Every time you speak, it's a reminder to value silence. It will sting, yes, because it unmasks the truth that their endless words aren't strength, but fear. And fear, once exposed, no longer controls the room. But here's the greater lesson. It isn't just about silencing others. It's about silencing yourself. About learning to step back, to hold your words until they matter. When you do that, you not only earn respect, you find peace. Because silence is not the absence of meaning. It is the space where meaning grows. So remember this. Wisdom doesn't always roar. Sometimes wisdom waits. Sometimes it holds its tongue. And when it finally speaks, its voice cuts deeper than any noise. Because in a world terrified of quiet, the one who values silence carries the deepest strength. At this stage, let's step into the fire most of us know too well. The sting of words that land sharper than they should. Not because they carry truth, but because they find us unprepared. An insult thrown casually, a jab hidden in laughter, a mocking tone delivered in front of others. The pain doesn't come from the sentence itself. It comes from the shadow of our own doubt. Now imagine this. Someone sneers at your ambition. "That's cute. You really think you'll make it?" Their voice is light, almost playful, but you feel the weight settle on your chest. Or they laugh at something you wear, dismissing it with a single line. On the surface, you smile. Inside, you crumble. That's how words become weapons. They only pierce when we hand them permission. The Stoics saw this clearly. Epictetus wrote, "If someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit in the provocation. In other words, the insult itself is powerless. What gives it life is our decision to carry it inward, to let it echo until it reshapes the way we see ourselves. But here is the truth you learn over time. Life's harshest blows don't come from words. They come from betrayal, from loss, from standing in storms that strip you bare. And when you survive those storms, something remarkable happens. The little barbs that once cut deep now bounce off the armor you've built. It's not that the world gets kinder, it's that you grow stronger. I remember a day when someone tried to reduce months of my work to a joke. "Not bad," he said, "for someone who doesn't usually take things seriously." The younger me would have scrambled to defend myself, desperate to prove the worth of my effort. But that day, I just smiled and replied, "If you're trying to hurt my feelings, you'll have to try harder." The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was clarity. Everyone in the room understood what had just happened. He hadn't shaken me. He had exposed himself, because in that moment, his words revealed not my weakness, but his need to control. Seneca once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That's the core of this comeback. It's not about arrogance. It's about sovereignty, the unshakable truth that no one else decides your worth. No stray remark gets to undo the battles you've already survived. Think about it. People who throw casual cruelty often do it for one reason. They want a reaction. They feel powerful when they see you flinch. They feel tall when you shrink. But when you respond with calm indifference, when you let them know their effort didn't even graze you, you take away their power completely. You teach them something far more painful than rejection. You show them their words are irrelevant. This is stoicism at work, to remain calm under fire, to meet provocation with steadiness instead of surrender. To live in such a way that no insult sticks, because you've already decided who you are. Epictetus reminded his students, "It is not events that disturb us, but our judgments about them. The insult is not the wound, our judgment is." And when you train your mind to see insults for what they are, attempts at control, cries of insecurity, they lose their sting forever. So here is the practice. The next time someone tries to bruise your spirit with sarcasm or mockery, pause, breathe, let your silence weigh heavier than their noise, and if the moment calls for words, deliver them with calm precision. If you're trying to hurt my feelings, you'll have to try harder, because that line says everything without anger. It says, "I know who I am. I know what I've survived. And your words are too small to touch me." And here's the beauty. When insults lose their power, you gain yours. You stop living at the mercy of others' voices. You stop shrinking for the comfort of fragile egos. You become untouchable, not because no one ever attacks, but because nothing they say can move the ground beneath you. So remember this, the strongest response isn't rage, it's clarity. The calm reminder that your story runs deeper than their sarcasm, and when you live with that truth, no insult will ever own you again. Entering this sixth reflection, picture the familiar moment when someone throws a jab, not to seek truth, but to see if they can shake you. The smirk on their face tells you what they're after. They want the rise, they want the spark. They want to feel important by proving they can touch your emotions. Now imagine pausing in that space. The air is heavy, everyone waiting for you to swing back. But instead of fighting, instead of defending, you deliver the line with calm precision. "You're not on the level to get a reaction from me." Suddenly, the entire stage collapses beneath them. Because what they wanted most, your attention, is exactly what they don't get. Marcus Aurelius once reminded himself, "Choose not to be harmed, and you won't feel harmed. Don't feel harmed, and you haven't been." This is the essence of the Stoic lesson here. No one can truly wound you without your consent. Their insults are arrows. But arrows only pierce if you decide to stand still and catch them. I remember a colleague years ago, let's call him Trent, who thrived on sly digs in meetings. He loved slipping in a sarcastic remark when others were listening, just to get a reaction. One afternoon, after I had presented an idea, he leaned back in his chair and said, "Not bad, for someone who usually stumbles through." I could feel the burn in my chest, the urge to lash back, but instead, I turned calmly and said, "You're not on the level to get a reaction from me." Then I carried on as if nothing had happened. The silence that followed was louder than any argument I could have made, because in that moment everyone saw the truth. He wasn't clever, he wasn't powerful, he was irrelevant, and nothing devastates someone who thrives on attention more than realizing they don't matter. Epictetus taught, when another blames you or hates you, or when people voice similar criticisms, go to their souls, penetrate inside, and see what sort of people they are. You will realize that there is no need to be racked with anxiety that they should hold any particular opinion about you. The Stoics trained themselves to step back and look at the source. Who is this person? What life do they lead? What truth have they built that gives their words weight? If the answer is none, why would you bend under their judgment? The strategy here is simple: deny them the stage. When you respond without anger, when you dismiss their provocation with steadiness, you teach them something painful, that they don't even qualify for your energy. And in a world where everyone fights to be seen, indifference is the sharpest blade. This discipline is not about arrogance, it's about clarity. You're not saying I'm above everyone, you're saying I will not lower myself to games that steal my peace. That is the difference between ego and stoicism. Ego shouts to prove superiority. Stoicism whispers to protect serenity. Seneca once wrote, "He who is brave is free." And what braver act is there than refusing to be pulled into petty battles? Freedom begins the moment you stop giving your reactions away like coins. Every time you withhold a reaction from someone unworthy, you strengthen your independence. Think of it like guarding a fortress. Not every traveler who passes deserves entry. If you open the gates for all, you lose the fortress. If you guard it with wisdom, you preserve its strength. Your mind, your emotions, your peace, they are that fortress, and not everyone deserves entry. So the next time someone tries to bait you, remember, they don't want truth. They want chaos. They want to stand taller by dragging you lower. Don't give them the satisfaction. Look them in the eye, steady as stone, and let the calm words fall. You're not on the level to get a reaction from me, because once you learn to withhold your reaction, you reclaim your freedom. And in that freedom, you discover a strength louder than any comeback and quieter than any insult could ever touch. At this stage, we arrive at the most revealing truth of all, that insults are rarely about the target. They are mirrors turned outward, attempts to hide weakness by pretending it belongs to someone else. And when you say, calmly, "That was a lot of effort just to sound insecure," you cut through the mask and expose what lies beneath. Now imagine the moment. A colleague takes aim at you during a meeting. Their remark is sharp, dressed in humor, designed to get a laugh at your expense. Everyone looks to you, waiting to see if you'll defend yourself, if you'll flinch. Instead, you let the silence breathe, then deliver the line with composure. The room shifts. The jab is no longer about you, it's about them. They're left standing in their own insecurity, and everyone can see it. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." Those who constantly try to diminish others reveal more about their inner world than about anyone else. Their sarcasm isn't strength. It's a confession, and Stoicism teaches us to recognize it as such, to see through the disguise, and to hold our center. I've seen this play out in real life. A friend was constantly mocked by a peer who never missed a chance to downplay his success. One day, instead of arguing, he responded with calm clarity. "That's a lot of energy just to sound insecure." The effect was immediate. The mocker had no comeback. The crowd saw the truth. And from that moment, the power dynamic shifted. Seneca warned, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, that is poor." Insecurity craves recognition. It craves attention. When you refuse to supply it, when you reveal it instead of feeding it, you starve it of the fuel it needs to survive. So the next time someone disguises their fear as humor, don't meet them with rage or defense. Meet them with clarity. Let them see their own reflection in your words. That was a lot of effort just to sound insecure, because nothing is more unsettling than being seen for what you really are. These comebacks are not just clever responses. They are quiet shields, simple words that protect your dignity without the need for anger. They are proof that peace can be defended without raising your voice. Every time you choose clarity over chaos, you remind yourself that strength does not have to shout. Strength can be calm, strength can be steady, and sometimes the quietest words are the ones that leave the loudest echo. Think carefully about what these 7 comebacks represent. They are not designed to win arguments or crush opponents. They are reminders that your life is too valuable to be spent reacting to every provocation. They show you that respect begins with yourself, with the boundaries you decide to honor. And they whisper a deeper truth. Your worth does not rise or fall according to the judgments of others. It remains steady because it is rooted in who you are, not in what they say. The Stoics understood this centuries ago. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself each day that people will act from ignorance, arrogance, and envy. Yet he also reminded himself that none of this has to disturb the mind unless we allow it. Your reaction is the last line of freedom. No insult can touch you if you do not open the door. No sarcasm can wound you if you refuse to carry it home. When you hold that discipline, you walk through life with a power that cannot be stolen. So when someone tries to provoke you, do not hand them your peace. You do not need to shout to prove you are strong. You do not need to explain yourself to make your value visible. One calm sentence, spoken without trembling, can stop arrogance in its tracks. Let them sit with their own words. Let your stillness speak louder than any argument. Then walk away, not in weakness, but in mastery. Because your energy belongs to creation, not to conflict. You have more important things to build. A mind to sharpen, a life to protect. If this message speaks to you, share your strength in the comments by writing, "Stay calm," and if you want more reminders to anchor your center, subscribe so that these lessons return to you when you need them most. Carry this mindset with you into tomorrow. Speak with purpose. Protect your silence. And remember, the path of mastery is only beginning. The next lesson will take you further, deeper, and closer to the freedom of a mind that nothing can disturb.